The Family Feud studio radiated its characteristic warmth on that November afternoon in 2024. Steve Harvey stood at center stage in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, prepared to guide another episode through the familiar format that had brought comfort and entertainment to American families for decades. The audience settled into their seats with eager anticipation, production staff monitored their equipment with practiced efficiency, and two families stood ready at their podiums for what appeared to be standard competition. However, within the next 30 minutes, a revelation would emerge that would reduce Steve Harvey to tears on camera, demonstrating that sometimes the most powerful moments in television occur when we witness genuine human courage in the face of devastating circumstances. If you are discovering our channel for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe and engage with this content, because what follows is an extraordinary testament to the strength of the human spirit when confronted with mortality and the choice to live fully in whatever time remains. Standing at the contestant podium was 44-year-old Daniel Matthews from Portland, Oregon. He presented as a fit, energetic man with an athletic build, wearing a crisp white shirt and dark jeans, his smile warm and his demeanor suggesting vitality and health. Beside him stood his wife of 18 years, Rebecca Matthews, their three children ranging in age from 16 to 11, and Daniel's younger brother Kyle. The Matthews family appeared to represent active, engaged living, the type of family that participated in sports together, volunteered in their community, and approached life with enthusiasm and purpose. What the studio audience could not perceive from external observation was that Daniel Matthews had received a diagnosis 6 months earlier that had fundamentally altered his understanding of his own future and had transformed every moment of his existence into something precious and finite. Daniel had been diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, commonly known as ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. The progressive neurodegenerative condition attacks nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, gradually destroying the ability to control voluntary muscle movement. Patients with ALS typically experience increasing weakness and muscle atrophy, eventually losing the capacity to walk, speak, eat, and ultimately breathe. The disease progresses at different rates in different individuals, but the median survival from diagnosis is approximately 3 to 5 years. There is no cure, and treatment options focus primarily on managing symptoms and maintaining quality of life for as long as possible. The diagnosis had come after several months of concerning symptoms that Daniel had initially dismissed as minor issues related to aging or overwork. He had noticed occasional muscle twitching in his arms and legs, episodes of unusual fatigue that seemed disproportionate to his activity level, and moments when his speech became slightly slurred or his coordination felt impaired. As a high school physical education teacher and coach who prided himself on fitness and health, Daniel had been reluctant to acknowledge that something might be seriously wrong. However, when he began experiencing difficulty with fine motor tasks like buttoning his shirts or tying his shoes, Rebecca had insisted he see a physician for comprehensive evaluation. The diagnostic process had been thorough and devastating. Neurological examinations, electromyography testing, magnetic resonance imaging, and blood work had systematically ruled out other potential explanations before confirming the diagnosis that Daniel and Rebecca had begun to fear, but had hoped desperately to avoid. The neurologist had delivered the news with compassion but clarity, explaining what ALS was, how it would progress, what treatment options existed, and what the statistical prognosis suggested about Daniel's remaining lifespan. The conversation had occurred in a sterile medical office, and Daniel remembered very little of it except the way Rebecca's hand had tightened around his own, and the feeling that the floor had disappeared beneath them both. The 6 months following the diagnosis had been a journey through grief, acceptance, and ultimately a determined commitment to live fully in whatever time remained. Daniel and Rebecca had told their children about the diagnosis in an age-appropriate way, being honest about the seriousness of the condition while emphasizing that they would face it together as a family. The children had responded with a mixture of fear, sadness, and remarkable resilience, drawing closer together and to their parents in ways that both broke Daniel's heart and filled it simultaneously. Daniel had continued working as a teacher and coach for as long as he was able, finding profound meaning in his interactions with students who had no idea their educator was facing a terminal diagnosis. He had approached each practice, each game, each class with intensified presence and gratitude, knowing that an ordinary Tuesday afternoon teaching volleyball skills might be one of his last opportunities to do work he loved. He had begun creating video messages for his children, recording advice and memories and expressions of love that they could access after he was gone. He and Rebecca had intensified their commitment to creating meaningful experiences, taking a family trip they had always discussed but had postponed for practical reasons, having difficult but important conversations about end-of-life wishes and financial planning, and simply spending time together with deliberate appreciation. The Matthews family had also made decisions about how public or private to be about Daniel's diagnosis. They had told close friends and family members, creating a support network that provided both practical assistance and emotional sustenance. However, they had chosen not to make a general public announcement, wanting to avoid being defined entirely by the disease and preferring to maintain some normalcy in their daily interactions. Daniel had not yet disclosed his diagnosis to his students or colleagues at school, planning to do so when his symptoms became more visible and explanation became necessary. The Family Feud appearance had been Rebecca's idea, proposed as a way to create a positive family memory and to do something fun and normal together, while Daniel still had the physical capacity to participate fully. The application had been submitted 4 months after the diagnosis, during a period when Daniel was experiencing relatively stable symptoms. When they were selected and scheduled for taping, the family had viewed it as a gift, an opportunity to laugh together, and to experience something outside the medical appointments and emotional processing that had dominated their lives since the diagnosis. The game proceeded through its initial rounds with enthusiastic play. The Matthews family performed well, demonstrating excellent teamwork and accumulating points that positioned them favorably to advance. Steve facilitated the usual entertaining interactions, drawing laughter from Daniel's occasionally competitive responses and from the children's quick wit and good humor. The family dynamic appeared joyful and connected, with Daniel and Rebecca displaying the deep partnership that sustained them through both ordinary life and extraordinary crisis. However, as the game progressed, Steve Harvey began to notice something about Daniel that caught his attention in ways he could not immediately articulate. There was an intensity to the way Daniel looked at his family, a quality of fierce presence that seemed unusual even accounting for the excitement of being on television. Several times, Steve observed Daniel watching his children with an expression that combined profound love with something that looked like grief, an emotional complexity that felt disproportionate to the casual context of a game show. When the Matthews family won their match and advanced to fast money, the standard celebration took on additional emotional weight that Steve sensed, but did not yet understand. Rebecca went first in the fast money round, answering the 5 questions and scoring 168 points, a strong performance that meant Daniel needed only 32 points to secure the $20,000 prize. The mathematics were straightforward, the pressure minimal, success virtually guaranteed. Steve positioned himself at the podium beside Daniel, prepared to ask the questions that would likely result in easy victory. However, before Steve could begin, Daniel requested permission to say something. "Mr. Harvey, before we do this, I want to tell you and everyone watching why this moment matters so much to my family. I want to share something that puts this game in perspective." Steve's expression shifted from game show host to attentive listener, recognizing from Daniel's tone and demeanor that something significant was about to be shared. "Of course, Daniel. What do you want to say?" Steve responded, giving him complete attention. Daniel took a breath that seemed to require conscious effort, then spoke with the clarity that comes from having accepted difficult truth. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It is a progressive neurodegenerative disease that will gradually take away my ability to move, to speak, to eat, and eventually to breathe. There is no cure. The median survival is 3 to 5 years from diagnosis. I am standing here today knowing that this is probably one of the last times I will be physically able to do something like this with my family, and I am trying to memorize every detail of this moment so I can hold on to it when my body no longer allows me to make memories like this. The studio fell into profound silence. Steve Harvey's face registered shock, then deep sadness, then visible emotion as tears began forming in his eyes. The audience sat motionless, the usual game show energy replaced by collective recognition that they were witnessing something far beyond entertainment. Rebecca and the children were crying, though they were also smiling, their expressions showing both sorrow at the reality Daniel had described and pride in his courage to speak about it publicly. Steve stood frozen for several seconds, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Daniel, I do not even know what to say. I am trying to process what you just told me. ALS is a devastating diagnosis. The fact that you are standing here with your family, participating in this game, living your life fully even while carrying that knowledge, that takes extraordinary courage. Steve paused, wiping tears from his eyes before continuing. Can I ask you, why did you decide to share this here now on national television? Daniel's answer revealed the purpose behind his public disclosure. Because I have been thinking a lot about legacy and about what I want my life to mean. I have been a teacher and coach for 20 years. I have worked with hundreds of young people, trying to teach them not just about sports, but about character and perseverance, and living with integrity. Now I am facing the ultimate test of those values. How do I respond when confronted with my own mortality? Do I collapse into bitterness and despair, or do I choose to live fully and love deeply for whatever time I have? I wanted to share my diagnosis because I want people to understand that we all have limited time, even if we do not know exactly how limited. Every day is a gift, and we should live accordingly. Steve walked several steps away, his hand covering his mouth as he fought to control his emotions. When he returned, he addressed Daniel with profound respect. You are teaching right now, Daniel. You are teaching everyone watching about grace and courage and what it means to face the unimaginable with dignity. Your students are fortunate to have had you as a teacher, and your children are blessed to have you as a father. He turned to Rebecca and the children. And you all, supporting him through this, being here with him, that shows incredible love and strength as well. Rebecca spoke, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Mr. Harvey, we made a decision as a family when Daniel was diagnosed. We could let this disease steal our remaining time together by focusing only on what we are losing, or we could choose to embrace whatever time we have with gratitude and joy. We chose joy. We chose to keep living, keep laughing, keep creating memories together. That is why we are here today. This is not about denial or pretending everything is fine. This is about refusing to let the disease define our entire existence. The Matthews children each spoke briefly about their experience. Their 16-year-old daughter Emma explained that knowing her father's time was limited had changed her priorities, making her more present with family and less concerned with trivial drama that had previously seemed important. Their 14-year-old son, Nathan, described how his father's diagnosis had taught him about real courage, which was not the absence of fear, but the choice to keep moving forward despite fear. Their 11-year-old daughter Sophia, the youngest, spoke with touching simplicity about how she tried to hug her dad extra tight every day because she knew those hugs would not always be possible. Steve was openly weeping now, making no attempt to hide his tears. I have been doing this job for many years, and I have met thousands of families, but I have never encountered a family quite like yours. The love and strength you are demonstrating right now, the choice to face this terrible situation together with such grace, it is humbling and inspiring. He paused, collecting himself before continuing. Daniel, I want to ask you something. You said you want to live fully for whatever time you have. What does that look like for you? What are you doing with your remaining time? Daniel's response revealed the intentionality with which he was approaching his shortened future. I am focusing on 3 things. First, I am being present with my family. Not just physically present, but genuinely engaged and attentive. I am having conversations with my children that I might have postponed if I thought I had unlimited time. I am telling my wife every day how much she means to me. I am creating video messages for my children to watch after I am gone, sharing advice and memories and love that I hope will sustain them. Second, I am continuing to teach and coach for as long as I am able, because that work gives me purpose and allows me to positively impact young people. And third, I am trying to live in a way that honors the life I have been given, making choices aligned with my values and not wasting energy on things that do not matter. Steve listened with complete attention, then made a decision that would extend the impact of this moment beyond the immediate conversation. Daniel, I want to help you with those goals. First, regarding your family, your $20,000 in prize money is yours, and I am going to add another $20,000 from my foundation to help with medical expenses or whatever your family needs. Second, regarding your teaching, I want to feature your story on my talk show and create a segment about the lessons you are teaching through how you are facing this diagnosis. And third, regarding living according to your values, I want to connect you with organizations that support ALS patients and their families so you can be part of a community that understands what you are experiencing. The generosity and thoughtfulness of Steve's response brought fresh tears from the entire Matthews family. Daniel expressed gratitude while also emphasizing that he did not share his diagnosis seeking pity or special treatment, but rather hoping to inspire others to live more intentionally. Steve acknowledged this while maintaining that providing resources and support was not about pity, but about recognizing an opportunity to make a genuine difference during a difficult time. The conversation continued for nearly 30 minutes beyond normal game show parameters, with Steve asking thoughtful questions about Daniel's physical symptoms, his emotional journey since diagnosis, his relationship with his medical team, and his plans for the progression of the disease. Daniel answered with remarkable openness, describing the grief of losing physical abilities incrementally, the fear of becoming dependent on others for basic care, the sadness of knowing he would miss major milestones in his children's lives, and the determination to face all of it with as much courage and grace as possible. The episode that aired 6 weeks later was presented as a special extended segment with content warnings and resources for viewers affected by ALS or other terminal diagnoses. The production included educational information about ALS, explanation of current research into treatments and potential cures, and guidance about support services available for patients and families. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within days, the clip had been viewed millions of times across various platforms. ALS advocacy organizations reported dramatic increases in donations and volunteer inquiries. People shared the story widely, often with personal reflections about how Daniel's courage had inspired them to approach their own lives with greater intentionality and gratitude. Daniel continued teaching for 4 months after the Family Feud appearance, finally transitioning to medical leave when his physical symptoms progressed to the point where classroom management became unsafe. His school held a tribute assembly where students, colleagues, and community members expressed appreciation for his years of service and his ongoing demonstration of courage. The event was emotional but also celebratory, honoring Daniel's life and impact rather than treating him as though he had already died. 3 months after the original taping, Daniel and his family returned to Steve Harvey's talk show for a follow-up interview. The progression of the disease was visible. Daniel's movements were slower and required more effort, his speech was slightly more labored, and he used a cane for stability. However, his spirit remained strong, and his commitment to living fully was undiminished. He shared updates about his condition, discussed the ongoing process of preparing his family for life without him, and reflected on the positive responses his story had generated. Rebecca spoke about the practical and emotional challenges of caregiving as Daniel's physical abilities declined, acknowledging the difficulty while also emphasizing the privilege of being able to care for the person she loved. The children discussed their own processing of their father's approaching death, the grief counseling they were receiving, and the ways they were trying to honor his legacy by living according to the values he had taught them. The conversation was honest about the pain and fear, while also demonstrating remarkable resilience and love. Steve used the platform to address broader issues about mortality, legacy, and living with intention. Palliative care specialists discussed the importance of quality of life when facing terminal diagnoses, explaining approaches to symptom management and emotional support. Grief counselors addressed anticipatory grief, the mourning that occurs before actual death when families know loss is approaching. ALS researchers provided updates on current studies and emerging treatment possibilities, offering hope while being realistic about the current state of medical science. The interview concluded with Daniel offering advice that had emerged from his experience facing mortality. We all have limited time, though most of us have the luxury of not knowing exactly how limited. I now know my time is measured in months or perhaps a couple of years rather than decades. That knowledge has clarified what matters: Love matters. Relationships matter. Living according to your values matters. The rest, the status and possessions and achievements we often prioritize, those things fade in significance when you understand that your time is genuinely finite. My hope is that people watching this will not wait for a terminal diagnosis to live intentionally. Choose now to focus on what truly matters. Tell the people you love that you love them. Do the work that gives you purpose. Create the memories that will sustain your family when you are gone. Do not wait. As this profound story reaches its conclusion, several essential lessons merit consideration. Daniel Matthews' decision to share his ALS diagnosis publicly transformed a game show appearance into a powerful meditation on mortality, meaning, and the choice to live fully even when facing death. His courage in speaking openly about his terminal condition gave permission to others facing similar circumstances to acknowledge their reality without shame or isolation. His commitment to continuing purposeful activity, for as long as physically possible, demonstrated that terminal diagnosis does not require immediate surrender to patient identity, but can coexist with continued engagement in meaningful work and relationships. The Matthews family's collective approach to Daniel's diagnosis illustrated that terminal illness affects entire family systems, requiring everyone to adapt while supporting each other through grief and loss. Their choice to focus on gratitude and presence rather than only on what they were losing provided a model for navigating impossible circumstances with grace. The openness with which they discussed their experience, including the fear and sadness, alongside the love and determination, validated the complexity of emotions that accompany terminal diagnosis for patients and families. Steve Harvey's response to Daniel's revelation demonstrated the profound impact that occurs when public figures use their platforms to honor human courage rather than simply extracting emotional content for entertainment purposes. His tears were genuine expressions of being moved by Daniel's story, and his subsequent actions to provide financial support and amplify Daniel's message showed commitment beyond momentary emotion. His willingness to let the conversation extend far beyond normal game show parameters reflected appropriate prioritization of human significance over production schedules. If this account has affected you or prompted reflection about your own mortality and how you are choosing to spend your limited time, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and engage with this content by leaving a like, because these stories of human courage in the face of death matter profoundly. They remind us that we are all terminal, that death comes for everyone eventually, and that the question is not whether we will die, but how we will live in the time we have. Daniel Matthews' openness about his life-changing ALS diagnosis on the Family Feud stage will be remembered not as entertainment, but as a powerful call to intentional living, demonstrating that facing mortality with courage and grace, while refusing to surrender joy and purpose, represents the highest expression of human resilience and the most profound legacy one can leave for those who remain after we are gone.